Welcome to the LATAM MedTech Leaders Podcast, a conversation with leaders who have succeeded or plan to succeed in Latin America. Please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, etc. Today, our guest is Carlos Medina. He is the lead. He leads the Mexican team for a company whose core competency is to accelerate the entry of new products into emerging markets across the globe. The company is Hasten LLC, and Carlos manages Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. Right, Carlos?
That's right on the money, Julio. Thank you for the invitation.
Excellent, Carlos. It's great to have you here today. Welcome to the show. All right.
It's a
So,
pleasure having a chance to converse with your audience.
beautiful, beautiful. I'm very pleased to have you here. Hastings and me have known each other. Your founder, your CEO, and I have known each other for quite a while. So I'm very pleased to, privileged to having you today. Hastings is growing in Latin America, so I'm sure it's going to be an exciting episode today.
And this is one more of those collaborations that we like so much.
Excellent, excellent. All right, Carlos. So let's get started with your journey to Latin America. I understand that you're a medical doctor. You got involved in medical innovation with Hasten, and tell us about your past and where you are today. How you got to where you are today.
Well, it all started when I went into medical school because I went there looking to do some clinical research. I like to do complex puzzles and solve different difficult problems. And when I went into medical school, I was fortunate enough to be one of the first generations that had full access to the internet at the National University here in Mexico City. And that blew up a whole different world of technology that we could apply to medical science. So I ended up not going into clinical research, but rather going into medical informatics ever since I finished my clinical rotations. And I've been working on that for the past 20 plus years, going through editorial projects, continuing medical education, medical marketing, and now I'm working with Hasten, trying to make business happen and to get the information flowing across the various health networks in Latin America.
All right, very good. And I just realized that I mispronounced the name of the company. I said Hastings. It's Hastings.
It, it really depends on which country you're at. The company
Yeah,
is Brazilian, and my Brazilian countrymen, my colleagues in Brazil, they usually call it Hasten.
Hastings.
So
Oh,
uh,
okay.
it
Yeah.
may be just my U.S. My U.S. Bias creeping into the name, but the I like hasten because that brings the connotation of doing things faster.
Very good. Yeah, I like that. I like that. All right. So the company is Brazilian, right? And we're gonna get to that in a moment. But we're gonna speak about the genesis of the company. Your founder and CEO has a very interesting story behind how he got started
Yep.
in this business in Brazil. Anyway, so let's talk about trends, Carlos. What trends do you see happening in Latin America that are relevant to our
Well,
discussion today?
well, it's kind of hard to miss the elephant in the room. I mean, COVID has been throwing trends left and right, but I think it has brought into very sharp focus one of those trends, which is that most of the medical technologies take a little bit longer to get to the Latin American countries. And any efforts that we can expend to make that technology get to these countries faster is going to be beneficial for all the patients and the medical institutions as well. So that's the first one, trying to get medical technology to take root faster in these countries. But other than that, I do see a lot of efforts spent by the government and by even private companies like ours to collaborate and to build networks to accelerate the development of new technologies. I see a lot of startup clusters throughout Mexico. I've been fortunate enough to work in most of the countries in Latin America, and I see a lot of technologies being brought forth to solve the inequalities of access to the medical system, which is sadly another one of those trends that is deeply etched into the Latin American healthcare, because you've got some very big differences between access to medical technology in the rural areas and in the cities, and even between countries. So being able to use technology, particularly information technology, to level the playing field and make sure that wherever you're at, you've got your cell phone in your hand and you've got access to medical healthcare, that it has good quality and that can actually save you time and effort going to a hospital. I think that's another one of the big trends that we have seen right now.
Excellent, excellent, and I'm very pleased to hear about these trends in Mexico. I imagine you're referring to Mexico a lot when you're talking about trends, since it's your natural market, and Mexico is one of the most is in the top three of the most attractive markets in Latin America. Is one of the biggest markets, right, with
Yep.
Brazil and then Colombia. So, and I love Mexico, by the way. It's a beautiful country. It's a country full of opportunities, and there's so much to do in Mexico still.
I I'll trade you. We'll have to do a an exchange program. You come to Mexico, I'll go to Colombia. I miss Colombia dearly as well. So yeah,
Yeah, excellent,
uh,
very good.
I think that that's another thing. Every country has a different role to play in the big organization. You have even some much smaller countries like Costa Rica or even República Dominicana,
Yeah.
which have
Mm,
such a big place in medical device manufacture and development that it really doesn't have to do with the market size. It needs to do. It has a lot of uh, investment into creating the right environment
okay.
to make those endeavors fruitful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned the Dominican Republic. It- there are a lot of early stage medical device clinical trials happening in the Dominican Republic.
Yep,
Not as much as Paraguay, but I see a lot of companies going to the Dominican Republic, and especially because a lot of physicians in the country get trained in the United States and go back to the Dominican Republic, so they have access to their colleagues and all that. And so,
correct. And when you couple that quality of clinicians willing to do the work with easy regulations that allow you
hmm,
to do the clinical trials without sacrificing the security of the patients. That's another important part. I think that's a winning combination that a
sure.
lot of other countries could follow suit and start
Yeah.
implementing.
Yeah, yeah. And Comfort Breeze is making some changes, right, to make it easier for clinical
Uh,
trials,
the
huh? Hmm.
yes, step by step, they're going in that direction. So they're trying to fast track the clinical trials, and they're also trying to uh, standardize the way that they evaluate things to be more in line with international regulations. I think that was a little bit a long time in coming, but it's happening now with the new administration.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah, we can talk about clinical
Yeah,
trials in Latin America for hours. That's probably a topic of another episode. But let's get let's speak in more detail about Hasten, right?
sure.
And the origin of the company and what you guys are doing in Latin America.
Yeah, well, the company, as I said, was founded in Brazil, founded by one of my former bosses, Eduardo de Melo, who has had a tremendous career. He's been in pharmaceutical companies, he's done research, he's been working in clinical decision support systems, which is actually where we met. We both worked at Up to Date. And then he left Up to Date and started working in other projects. And he started seeing and getting this idea of trying to do exactly what I described at the beginning, trying to get medical technology to take root and to come to developing countries much faster than it currently was. Because, as I said, if you've got a great blockbuster drug or medical device, but it won't be available in your country for 2 or 3 years after it starts being offered in the main markets, that really limits the options of the patients and the doctors to provide the best care possible. And he started building a network of collaboration throughout many countries, starting in Latin America, and then he started working with China. Now we've got affiliates in Europe, in South Africa. We're working on opening up operations in India, and we're building this collaboration network so that we can work with both medical device manufacturers and medical device distributors, as well as regulatory companies, to make sure that we can actually speed things up and make those technologies available as soon as possible in emerging countries where they are mostly needed.
Sure, sure. As you correctly said, Carlos, our patients in the region have delayed access to medical innovation, and a lot of it has to do with lack of information, ignorance about Latin America, and not seeing the region as a land of opportunity. I think there's so much to do in Latin America, and right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the countries like Mexico, Colombia, Chile are becoming leaders in the region,
Yep.
and they are OECD aligned. Even Costa Rica, they just became an OECD country. So these countries are maturing. They are part of the global economy, and they're important players. Now they're part of the Pacific Alliance, which is a very, very strong bloc of forward-looking countries adopting international policies, best practices.
And I think that's part of what led to the situation of delayed medical innovation availability. But the other part is that when these companies start making it big, they are obviously and naturally attracted to the large markets in the US and Europe. So they're going to be focused on achieving as much business as they can there. And a lot of the times they don't have the resources, whether they are material or human resources, to be able to focus on expansion on countries that they see as secondary markets. So we can provide them an opportunity to uh, start working on those markets without having to distract themselves or their
Sure.
resources for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of what's allowed us to be successful right now.
That's your value proposition,
Correct.
right? So they don't have to invest much time and money
Nope.
in these markets. You guys will take care of all the ugly work that needs to happen and the
Well,
investment and all
it's
that. Yeah.
necessary work,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we'll do it, and we'll build what we hope to be a long-term partnership with both the originators, the manufacturers, and the distributors, with
Distributors,
us acting as catalysts in between to
catalysts.
make
That's
to make sure that things happen and they happen faster.
that's a great word, catalyst. I like that.
I like it too.
All
Yeah.
right. Carlos, I'm very, very curious to hear what you think about NAMSA. And you and I spoke about that in our initial conversation before the recording today, and what NAMSA is doing in Latin America. I understand you guys um, are friends with NAMSA, have a collaboration with them. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure, of course. NAMSA, for those that are not familiar with that, they're probably not on the regulatory arena, but NAMSA is a very big company in the US, which now has presence in at least three continents right now. With they provide both consulting and um testing services, laboratory services, as well as clinical. They act as a CRO in many countries as well. So they actually call themselves a medical research organization. And we've been working with them for quite a few years right now to make sure that we can actually provide those quality services to our customers in Latin America. And I keep seeing them grow and grow because they've been offering exactly what is needed in the region. So for companies that are looking to solve their regulatory uh, issues for entry in the U.S. and in Europe, those are the two markets where they are focused mostly. They've got consultants for every aspect of product development, specifically for medical devices. They don't do pharmaceuticals, and they can provide end-to-end coverage. So it's a very good partnership for us, and that's been the backbone of a lot of our expansion. To be truthful.
Excellent, excellent. And also, they just acquired Clean Logics, right? And Clean Logics had a
Oh,
strong presence in Colombia.
yes, so they just acquired CleanLogix. That's the latest, the latest acquisition that they made. But they also acquired APS, and so they've acquired three major players in the regulatory and clinical research areas just in this year alone. So they are investing heavily in growth, and that's one of the other aspects that I really like about the organization, because they acquire technology to expand themselves. That's the nature of the business. That's one way to grow, but they don't lose the essence of those businesses. They keep what has made those businesses great companies, and they allow them to continue operating and to provide the services they have become known for. And they do that not only with the companies that they acquire. They also do that with partners like Hasten, because they know we know the market. They know that we can provide the local know-how on how things should be done, and they really listen. So they're able to provide all of that information to their customers as well.
Beautiful, beautiful, excellent. Yeah, I also understand they had another collaboration with somebody in Argentina, right? That was the initial collaboration that they had in Latin America.
That's still going. Yes,
Yeah, still going. Mm,
Hasten, we work with them to take care of customers in uh, most of Latin America except for the southern cone. So Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay, they handle with another company.
okay.
Sadly, I can't remember the name of them. If I
Yeah.
remember, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have multiple partners, and they're working with us here, and they're working with other local partners in other parts of the world as well, particularly in Asia.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So, Carlos, let's talk about your practical experience in Mexico and elsewhere in Latin America
Mhm.
that you see relevant for the discussion today. How are things going in Mexico in terms of regulatory approvals for innovative technologies? Any challenges you can mention? Any tips? Any best practices that you can share with us so that companies that are listening can learn from that?
Sure. So I think that when you ask me what the situation is right now, of course, COVID has brought a lot of delays in the administrative side of the regulatory affairs. You mentioned COFEPRIS. For those that might not be as familiar with Mexico, COFEPRIS is the uh, decentralized organ from the Ministry of Health that handles all regulatory uh, issues for medical device and drug and food, uh, kind of like the Mexican FDA, if you want to look at it. I think that's the easiest way to understand it. And they started prioritizing the evaluation and approvals of technologies that were COVID related, like many of the regulatory agencies did. And right now they're working on cleaning up their backlog of submissions, and they're doing that with a well-structured program that they're actually keeping us in the loop and giving us information on how that's proceeding uh, week after week. So they're slowly but surely making headwind there. Uh, it's still a long response time on their part. So we're talking at a close to a year on response times. So we have a lot of medical technology that's just waiting for answers. But in the meantime, while they're doing that, and dealing with the new leadership in place. They just had a change in their director, and that brought changes trickling down the line. But I think that has been a good change because they're starting to digitalize most of their processes. And with the current, we also just had a digital agenda released for Mexico, which is going to bring a lot of digitalization of the processes so that things will happen faster and can be automated in many of those arenas. So things will get better. Uh, Regarding the trends that you were mentioning, uh, we do I have to bring to attention that we do have a lot of players in the medical devices and medical technology arena that have had to close because of the demands on their business. But I see another very big group of companies that have thrived, as I mentioned, by using the technologies available. We've seen right now a lot of telemedicine companies providing video conferencing and providing secure communication with the patient so that they can be tended to from home. And I've seen in the past year, I think I've seen more new insurance and cooperative health plans. A lot of innovation as well in insurtech to take up the demand that a lot of the major and classical health insurance companies maybe had to put a brake on taking up health policies because they expected a lot of expenses from COVID, which I think is natural for the dynamic of that business. But that meant there were a lot of people looking for other avenues to get healthcare coverage, and these other companies started to invest and to develop them. And I think a couple of them are pretty good.
Okay, okay. And how do you see the current government and the outlook for the new government? Because Lopez Obrador, right,
Correct.
is the current president. How many more years does he have
He
in
just
power?
finished his third year,
3 years. So
and he has three more to go. So he's
three
at the
more to go.
middle. Yeah,
Wow. So we're in the middle of.
yeah, he's right in the middle of his presidency.
Hmm.
Uh, One thing I like about his administration is that he has a lot of very good ideas on how to enhance and uh, make all the processes that have been held up by bureaucracy and by um, corruption
Yeah.
faster and cleaner.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think he needs a little bit of work and a little to listen a little bit more to his advisors on how to get those done. Those have been hit or miss for me,
Okay.
but I don't want to politicize this too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the part that I am most excited about is this digital digitalization act that just was proclaimed last month, because that's going to bring digitalization not just to healthcare but to every aspect of the government.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
a lot of the things that you formerly needed to go to an office and maybe uh, spend a lot of time cutting red tape, those should be enhanced in the next few years, and particularly on the education and the access to the internet and to online services. I think they're going to be investing heavily. I'm not going to go into detail on how those
Yeah.
contracts will
Yeah.
get assigned, but uh, at least we'll start to see a lot more people get access to the internet and be able to be more autonomous in that sense.
Sure, that's all it matters. That the country modernizes the trámites. How do you call it? The processes and
Correct.
everything with the government.
All the
Know that
procedures.
the procedures and the citizens have access, faster access to the government. That's something that Colombia is probably leading Mexico
Correct. You've
on.
been
Yeah.
working on that for years now.
Yeah, for years now. Yeah. All right. I'm very happy to hear those news. And what about the rest of your territory? You also manage the Caribbean, Central America.
Hmm.
Can we speak about what's happening there in terms of challenges, in terms of new things coming up?
Well, you've got the essential challenges of budget and political administration, like you do in most countries. My work is currently focused mostly in Costa Rica and Dominicana. So those are the two countries because most of our projects are related to medical devices, and that's where the development is happening right now. Uh, but I think both of those countries are making a very good play in making it easier for companies to not only go and start producing devices there, but also invest in the local talent to produce medical devices and innovate in that. We've also been in contact with some other companies in Argentina and in Uruguay, which are creating amazing devices. Some of them so simple that I don't know why other companies did not think about that earlier. And I'm not going to say what it is, just so nobody steals their idea. They're still at the IP protection state. But I've seen others make wonderfully complex uh, devices for telemedicine. I've seen, uh, think of a Rubik's Cube, a device about that size with a pulse oximeter, a temperature sensor, a, a, a heart rate sensor, and a, a microphone that you can use to listen to lung and to heart sounds. So that brings another new level into telemedicine because you can actually start exploring and start doing a physical examination to the patient, even if you're not in the room. And all it needs is for you to tell the patient where to put it, and then it will pick up the signal, transmit it safely, and you can analyze it to provide patient care. So a lot of exciting technology coming down from Latin America.
Yeah, yeah. Argentina, particularly, has always been a kind of an innovative
Yep.
country.
They,
It has a long history of cars, military airplanes, and
mhm.
weapons and things of that nature.
They have had a very rough couple of decades trying to get that technology out, sadly, and getting other technology into the country has been tough because of the tariffs on external payments. So trying to import any technology to provide the the, the baseline so that you can create the next generation of technology is not that easy, but they're doing it and they're doing it really well.
Okay. Carlos, I'm very curious to hear about manufacturing medical
Yep.
devices in Latin America. You mentioned something that I didn't know about, which is the Dominican Republic becoming a player in the
So
manufacturing of medical devices. Is that
if
right?
if you look at the market of medical device exports, Dominican Republic is currently the number three country in the world in Latin
Wow.
America. So you've got Mexico,
Mexico, yeah.
you've got Costa Rica as the second one.
Yes, I
Those are the
know.
two major. But number three, you would think it might be Brazil or Colombia, but no, it's the Dominican Republic. And
Oh,
they're setting up a. I know it's a little bit counterintuitive because who would have thought that
yeah,
big companies would invest in building factories in an island where they have to take all of the raw materials in and then export the medical devices. But it's working really well because they've got very good fiscal conditions for manufacturing.
sure. Incentives.
Yes,
Wow.
and
Because
Colombia is number four, by the way.
yes, Colombia, I was just about to say that. Colombia is really, really pushing this agenda to
Correct.
bring more investment in pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing to the country because they have realized, as Costa Rica did and other countries in Latin America, that exporting raw material and commodities and soccer
And
players in the case of Colombia is not going to cut
And
it.
Colombia, I think, has an interesting angle on the manufacturing because you've got very interesting conditions for biological medical device manufacturing. It's one of the few countries where, for example, bone derivatives are not considered and are not uh, marked as class three medical devices.
Is that
Uh,
right?
yeah,
Huh.
INVIMA actually does not handle those approvals. They're handled by a different part of the government because they're not medical devices. They're implants, but they're made out of the remains of bone and other biological agents. So there's no moving parts. There's no electronics, so that gets shunted to a different administration, and it's
Interesting. I'm gonna do some research in that because
uh, yeah,
that's a curious fact. Yeah.
yeah, we've seen
All right.
a lot of companies in the Medellin area and in
Okay.
Cali coming up with nice implants in that arena.
Beautiful, beautiful. The issue with innovation in Latin America is that they are still local. They don't really think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been my experience, at least, Carlos, that they think very small. They think about solving a local problem. And these countries are so small. Sometimes, I mean, Colombia is 50 million people. Yeah, it may be large for some standards, but as compared to Bolivia or Uruguay or Paraguay or Panama, but still, it's a small country. I mean, the population of Florida is around that number. That's one state of 50 states in the United States. So my point with this is that they don't think globally,
Yeah,
and
and I think that's
yeah.
that's been one of the other aspects that has allowed us to be effective partners for a lot of these
Okay,
companies,
okay,
because both Eduardo, our chief operations officer based out of Hungary, myself, we've got another person from South Africa uh, working with us, David, and all of us have worked with various international companies. So amongst all of us, we've got uh, close to 60 years of experience dealing with business in different parts of the world. So, helping these companies that are initially thinking about solving a local problem and about overcoming the local regulations, regulatory demands, and working out how they can go to market in their country, that's like working with advisor and not looking at the big picture. So what we do is we help them look at that local situation, but plan at a later date and do all the regulatory work from the startup to be able to launch later at a global scale. And we'll help them get business partners on the other countries so they don't have to wait until they make it big in their own country
very good.
to start
Okay,
business outside. And I think that think global and act local uh, modus operandi is actually what sets us apart, because we act locally to achieve results in each country without without losing sight of the big picture and being able to provide the support that they would need for that.
very good, very good. All right, Carlos, we're close to the end of the episode, and what will be your final words of wisdom? What would you say to the CEO of a medical technology company that is just starting to look at Latin America as a place to do trials or to sell innovation? So, any
Well,
final words?
I think I just said my first recommendation, which is, yeah, uh, think global. You have to, but act local. So work with companies that know the local environment, that know how to do business in the countries that you want to go into, and listen to them. One of the main errors, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen international multi-million dollar companies is that they want to do everything in other countries the way that they had been doing it in their home country. And that just doesn't work. Particularly in Latin America, it doesn't work. You need to be able to be flexible, to be to think that your pricing might need to work. Your just one big example, your marketing. You might be a big company that's easily recognized in your home arena, but if you're just getting here, nobody knows who you are. So you have to start from the ground up, build up your presence, get market recognition, get key opinion leaders on your side so that people will actually start taking up your products. If you don't do that and you just rely on the very small percentage of doctors that get trained in the US or in Canada or in the Europe, then you're only pitching, you're only promoting to a very small percentage of the population. Same goes for language. A lot of companies think that having everything in English works okay because the doctors, a lot of the time, are fluent in English. But they might not have used it for
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
20
yeah,
years
yeah.
since they
It's
went
on
out
the
of school.
natural language. Yeah,
Correct. So if you can have something localized in Spanish, and even with Spanish in Colombia, in Mexico, in Argentina, is completely different. And that goes for medical technologies as well. So listen to the local companies and be humble enough to think that you might have to do things a little bit different without compromising your core values and without necessarily having to create a different product line. But you will need to listen to the way things are best done. Listen to the best practices your partners can give you, and yeah, beyond that, work with your local associations. I've been working with the Health Tech Association in Mexico. I know there's also health tech organizations. You've got the clusters in Medellin, in Colombia. You've got the uh, uh, Argentinian Medical Informatics Association. So all of those are working to make these commercial environments a better place. They probably have a lot of the information that you've been looking for. Just go over there. They're happy to collaborate and listen to what they have to say. You might be surprised at how little you need to change, but how much big impact little changes can make.
Excellent, Carlos. Great advice. Thank you for that. All right. So, how can people get in contact with you and Hasten?
Well, my email at Hasten is cmedina for Carlos Medina, cmedina at hastenllc.com. And you can find me in social media, both Twitter and LinkedIn, as Dr. Noir, Drnoir.
Okay. Nice. Nice handle.
Thank you.
All right, Carlos. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your presence and
My pleasure.
your sharing your knowledge and your plans in Latin America. I'm very excited about the future of Mexico with this news that you just shared with us. I didn't know that. That was fantastic. So,
Yes, we're about to see big changes.
excellent, excellent. I'm so happy about it. It's one of my dear countries in Latin America, in the world, I would say. If I were to choose a country to live, I would probably choose Mexico, to be honest
I've
with you.
I've had the
Yeah.
opportunity to move to any other country in Latin America, and I'm still here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Small guy. All right, Carlos. Ciao.
Ciao.